to our mainstream pumping station, which is an integral part of this whole tunnel and reservoir plan. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out this morning. We did plan the weather the way it is outside because that's the whole reason we're here today, is to celebrate the completion of the Deep Tunnel project, which will be handling what's coming from Mother Nature up above. So everybody was looking for sunshine and whatever, but we were praying for the rain. So let me just welcome each and every one of you this morning, as I said, to the mainstream pumping station. If I could all ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to ask our Vice President, Kathleen Therese Meany, to come to the podium to introduce the dignitaries that are with us this morning. Kathleen.
Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces to help us celebrate this wonderful accomplishment. And I'd like to give a special note of thanks to some of our distinguished guests that are here with us today. But first, I'd like to begin with our Board of Commissioners. Gloria Alito-Majewski, our Vice Chairman of Finance. Gloria. Patricia Young, Commissioner Patricia Young. Commissioner Frank Avila. Commissioner Cindy Santos. I know a few people called and said they're having trouble with traffic, but Commissioner Jim Harris. Commissioner Barbara McGowan. And of course, Commissioner Bus Urell. I'd like to give a special congratulations and thanks to our General Superintendent, Jack Farnan. Former President of the Board, Nick Mellis, is with us today. And we, former Commissioner, General Superintendent Ray Rimkus, I saw earlier. Some other favorite guests and supporters of the Water Reclamation District would be Senator Luby Burrito from Joe Stanzik. He's from Summit. Congressman Dan Lipinski, a great supporter, as was his father, a wonderful supporter. Mayor Ed Goodsall, a good friend of ours, Mayor. Cheryl Axley of the Illinois State Senate. Cheryl. Water Reclamation District candidate Deborah Shore is with us today. Deborah. I think I hope, let's say, that I haven't forgotten anyone, but specifically I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here, for your help along the way. And, oh, I'm so sorry, Jim. State Representative Jim Durkin and Tom Walsh, who's a former commissioner and member of the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I first want to call up to the podium the current Congressman, I think it's the 3rd District, Congressman Dan Lipinski, who has been very supportive of this project in his tenure as a congressman. But his father, Bill Lipinski, carried a lot of water for us in Washington, and no pun intended, to secure the federal dollars that are needed to continue on with the construction of this project. Congressman Dan Lipinski. Congressman, come on.
Well, as a former engineer, I know what a great engineering feat this was to get the deep tunnel project done. I know it's not all completely done. I know it's one of the reasons that I'm here is still more water to be carried out there in Washington to get the money to finish off the reservoir. But I was talking to people, we were all sharing our stories about growing up in this area and remembering the stories of the water coming up in our basements and what a major problem that was and how we've taken care of that with this great project. It's unfortunate that a lot of times sometimes we look at the short-term fixes. This took many, many years, some more years to come, but it's fantastic that we're able to do this. I congratulate the Water Reclamation District, all the commissioners, especially Terry O'Brien, and everyone who has helped be a part of this tremendous project. It makes a huge difference in everybody's lives. Our basements don't flood, our lake, rivers, streams are much less polluted, much cleaner. It's just wonderful. I'm glad to be here today to be a part of this celebration of completion.
Thank you, Congressman. And again, thank you for your help, as well as all the congressional delegation of the state of Illinois, as well as our 2 U.S. senators who have done yeoman's work with regards to securing the federal dollars for this particular project. I would now like to call on a gentleman that was probably here at the start of this particular project, my predecessors, Nicholas Mellis, former president of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation.
Thank you very much, Terry, and all the present commissioners for carrying out this project. You know, the Chinese have a saying that every long voyage begins with one small step. And as I sit here today to mark this wonderful occasion, I think back in the early 1960s when a very talented engineer by the name of Bauer came to us to the district with this revolutionary idea. And thank God that he persisted. Our general superintendent at that time, Denton Bacon, brought the idea to the commissioners, and we carried forward with it. And obviously, nothing can be accomplished without the help and support of a large number of people. This project, from its very inception, had complete support from the entire Illinois delegation in Congress. Val Adamkus, who was at the time the deputy director of the U.S. EPA here in the Chicago area, was one of the early supporters of the project and helped us usher us through the bureaucracy in Washington. And we had, during the Gerald Ford administration, a bipartisan duo named Rostkowski and Derwinski, who carried the ball at that time to get the approval so that this project could begin. But without the support of all of the members of the Illinois legislature that made sure that we had our bonding authority, all of the men and women of the district, the engineering staff particularly, and the support that we had gotten throughout the entire community, none of this would have been possible. And today, we can all be very, very proud and satisfied that at least this portion of the journey is complete, and we look forward to the completion. When is it? 2019 you're projecting? I'm trying hard to see if I can speed it. Whether I make it or not is in the hands of the Almighty. But certainly it'll be a great day when we can say that TARP is finished, now that the tunnel is done. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, President Mellis. If you're not here, maybe you get a 24-hour pass to come back. I do want to recognize a few other people that did walk in during the speeches. Newly elected or nominated Commissioner Patricia Horton. Patricia. Mayor of Chicago Ridge, Gene Siegel. Mayor. And the Executive Director of Friends of the Chicago River, Mark Frisbee. And one of our former colleagues on the board, and now a state senator, Senator Martin Sandoval. I now want to ask our current General Superintendent, Mr. Jack Farnan, to come to the podium to make a few remarks.
Thank you. I just happened to be here at the end of the job as superintendent. Little did I know 35 years ago, and I was working for an engineering firm, and they sent me out onto the first tunnel in 1971, that I'd be back here 35 years later celebrating the end of the job. In those 35 years, 29 of them here, you know, innumerable people, you know, across many professions, lawyers, engineers, investment bankers, elected officials, have fought to get this job done. We had substantial opposition at times. People didn't think it would work. Now we look at our rivers, we got 52 species of fish in the river. You know, people can now look at the Chicago River out thousands and thousands of condominium units. Years ago, no one would ever look down at the river. No one would ever want to buy a house along the river. As a youngster, I remember walking over 35th Street and crossing something called Bubbly Creek, which was memorialized in the jungle. It stunk. There was a film on top of it. Today, when I drove by, crossing the 35th Street Bridge on the way here, I can look down and there are geese in the river. There are fish in the river. We found rainbow trout in the river, not just a few years ago. So our waterways are coming back, but it isn't because of my efforts. It's become a venture of, you know, how do they say it? 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people need to do something to get it done. But everybody in this room literally had a part in the job, and you know, for them, you know, plaudits to you. You can, you know, tell your grandchildren that I was a part of improving the lives of the people of Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnan.
Watching me. Last supper. One more, we got it. Here we go. On three. 1, 2.
My name is Commissioner Frank Avila. I'm one of 9 commissioners at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And today we are celebrating the ceremony of the completion of the deep tunnel, a portion of the TARP project. They still have to complete the 2 reservoirs, the Thornton Reservoir and the McCook Reservoir. But I have with me the president of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District at the time that we started the project of the TARP project, and his name is President Nick Mellis. Nick, looking back, what year was that when that came to being about the doing the TARP project?
We first started considering the possibility in the early 1960s when an engineer named Bauer came to us with this revolutionary idea of building 35-foot diameter tunnels 200 to 300 feet below ground. Nobody thought it was possible, but we did engineering survey work. We hired some of the finest engineering firms in the city of Chicago, and after we found that the feasibility studies proved that it could be possible because of the fine layer of rock under Chicago, it was left as a remnant from when the glacier retreated some 40,000 years ago. So it was possible to dig through this rock stratum and build these tunnels to hold the polluted stormwater overflow. When the 1972 law was passed by Congress, the Clean Water Act, it was known as,
Public Law 92-500, it became illegal to have combined sewer overflow. We had an answer for it. And after many years of work and study and looking over the plans, we did get the approval of the local branch of the U.S. EPA in 1974. And then in 1976, we finally got the final approval from Washington, and construction began in 1976. And here we are, 30 years later, and the last section of the 110 miles of underground tunnel is now completed.
And you know, we were very fortunate that we had commissioners like Nick Mellis that foresee the future on how to help Cook County. Because if it wasn't for the vision of Commissioner or President Nick Mellis saying, look, this is what we need. So in 2006, the city of Chicago and Cook County, when we have a large storm, we don't have to dispose of any storm water into Lake Michigan, polluting all the beaches. Now everything is discharged into the deep tunnel.
That's right. And another thing that is really important is by getting the U.S. EPA to take this on as a federally authorized EPA project, that brought in 75% of the total cost of this $3 billion project was paid for by federal money, so that the residents of Cook County were being taxed only for 25% of this entire massive project. And it was through the help of our elected representatives in Congress that we were able to show that this tunnel project was worthy of federal support.
And this project helps the environment.
Oh, it absolutely. Back 40 years ago, you couldn't conceive of building a office building or a residential building alongside the Chicago River. All these big buildings that were being built back in those days put their back to the river. Today, riverfront property is at a premium. The rivers have come back to life. Species of fish have come back. I think we were talking about it today, 32 different species of fish now reside in the Chicago River. That would have been an impossibility 30, 40 years ago.
And this is why it's so important that a deep project has to be completed. And we have to complete our reservoirs, the Thornton Reservoir and McCook. And also we have other projects. We have our Stage 2 project that we need to complete here also. And we're very fortunate that we're living here in Cook County, because a while back when down in New Orleans, when the hurricane came through and destroyed the levees, everything was destroyed. Unfortunately, living here in Cook County, we don't have anything like this here. We have a very excellent Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, Greater Chicago, which treat our wastewater, and we treat it at a very economical cost.
Well, Daniel Burnham once said, "Make no little plans." That has been true with the Water Reclamation District from the day it was created. If you will recall, Frank, back in 1890, they started to work to dig the Sanitary and Ship Canal, which actually reversed the flow of the Chicago River, which in those days was running into Lake Michigan and bringing pollution into the water that was being utilized for drinking purposes. So the Sanitary and Ship Canal was dug, a 35-mile canal dug between 1890 and 1900 to reverse the flow of the Chicago River. And for the next 80 years, all that polluted material went down the river and towards the Mississippi and eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. But now, since 1986, even that pollution now is trapped by the Deep Tunnel Project, and the most important thing of all is it has kept Lake Michigan free and clear of the pollution from this metropolitan area of 6 to 8 million souls.
Thank you very much, Commissioner and President Nick Mellis. President Nick Mellis was one of the outstanding president of the, at that time it used to be called the Metropolitan Sanitary District of Greater Chicago. You know, I still prefer that name.
It was a better name.
Better name, but President Mellis was one of the outstanding commissioner and president of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago.
Thank you very much, Frank. Good luck to you.
I have with me Commissioner Patty Young of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, and also Margaret Frisbee, Executive Director of Friends of the River. Commissioner Young, why do you think this is so important that we just completed the Deep Tunnel and we're having our ceremony here today?
It's appropriate that we have Friends of the River represented here, and it's really wonderful that they joined us today to celebrate the accomplishment of the tunnels of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District's TARP project, the completion of the tunnel portion, and we're now working on completing the reservoirs. But it is these tunnels, which are similar to this conveyance tunnel behind us that you may see, that capture and store combined sewer overflows and prevent that polluted water from entering the Chicago River. And since the Deep Tunnel Project went online in 1985, we have been able to capture millions and millions of gallons of combined sewer overflow and prevent that flow from entering the Chicago River system, thereby protecting the river system. And today, the river now has about 52 different species of fish like largemouth bass, bluegill, rainbow trout, yellow trout, fish that years ago would have never been able to thrive and survive in the Chicago River. The only river fish in the river that you could find 20, 30 years ago were carp, and which are bottom feeders. So, but today, and Margaret can attest to this, there is all kinds of development along the banks of the Chicago River, and the river has essentially become an extension of the lakefront, of the Lake Michigan lakefront, where people want to live along the river. They want to buy property. Years ago, buildings were built along the Chicago River with their backs facing the river. They would never consider putting their front door facing the Chicago River. But today, all of these new developments, and it's been an economic boon for the city of Chicago as well. There would be no Trump Tower being built along the Chicago River if it were not for the Water Reclamation District cleaning the Chicago River and beautifying it to the extent that it is today.
And I'll mention that they're building condominiums along Bubbly Creek. On the south side.
And houses, single-family homes also.
And, you know, Friends of the River has a very good project. Is that on State and Wacker Drive? They call it the Fish Hotel?
That's right. In Michigan, in Wacker Drive, right in front of the about-to-open McCormick Tribune Bridge House and Chicago River Museum, is the Michigan Avenue Fish Hotel, which is actually a place now that the river's healthy enough for fish. The fish can come to live in areas where there's not natural habitat. So we'll actually be opening the Fish Hotel for business again in the first week of June. And it'll be there all summer through actually October of this year. So we're looking forward to sharing that with the public.
Well, you know, I'm going to get a room there at the Fish Hotel. I think it's a bargain to have good service, and you're right there along the waterfront. Now, Friends of the River, what type of activities do you have along our channels?
Well, Friends of the Chicago River works through a variety of ways. We do on-the-ground projects, which means physical improvements to the river, like installing wetlands, encouraging best management practices on how people interact with the river, eliminating using, pesticides and fertilizers, things that affect water quality and can harm aquatic plants and animals. We also work through policy and planning, so we work with groups like the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District on making good decisions, and clearly we've worked together on a lot of very successful projects. We also do a lot of education and outreach, and in fact tomorrow is Chicago River Day, our annual river cleanup, where we have 4,000 volunteers out along the river cleaning the river, picking up trash, but also pulling out pulling out invasive plants and planting native plants in order to make the whole environment much healthier.
You know, Margaret, what can the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District do for the Friends of the River to improve the channel? You know, we have to look outside and get opinions from groups like yourself to see how we can improve the district, because the district belongs to the people. What can we do more?
Well, I think that we've been good partners, and I think we've seen today with the opening of the tunnels that there has been improvement to the river. We also recognize that stormwater continues to be an issue and creates pollution in the river system. So we would love to work with you to help finish the reservoir portion of the TARP plan, but also to encourage continuing to have open space along the river where clean rainwater will go into the ground and infiltrate into the ground rather than ending up in storm sewers, which costs taxpayers money and also transforms clean rainwater into sewer water. So we'd like to work together with you to do that.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Patty Young and Margaret Frisbee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I have with me Commissioner Majewski, and Commissioner Majewski is chair of the Finance Committee. And Commissioner Majewski, how long have you been here?
I have been on the board since 1984, so I'm 22 years in December.
And the TARP project started in '72.
The TARP project was approved by the Board of Commissioners in 1972, and my late husband was on the board at that time and cast the vote for it. And then in '76, of course, they started the construction work.
And if we didn't have your husband that had the vision of approving the deep tunnel, we would not be here today seeing how it improved the Cook County in their pollution and flooding.
That's very true. The 9 commissioners on the board at that time bit the bullet, so to speak, and approved to go forward to try and get the funding and everything for this. It was wonderful. And he spent a lot of nights reading over the reports and everything, and he was, he was worried.
Sure,
but
because
he knew that he had confidence in the district engineering staff.
Sure, because in 1972, when they probably told the public what they want to do, they said, who have ever heard of digging a tunnel 109 miles long, 300 feet below the ground?
That's for sure. Absolutely. They were pioneers, Frank.
Yes.
They were pioneers at this type of construction. But the district has done a magnificent job. They've kept moving forward with it and getting the proper funding. And of course, our President Terry O'Brien today mentioned that the congressional delegation in Washington, led by Dan Rostenkowski and Ed Dewinski, really got the funding started for our agency. So we owe them a big debt of gratitude.
Sure, because in 1972, when they mentioned this project and the dollar amount is going to cost billions of dollars, in '72, people were probably saying, who's going to pay for all this and how are we going to pay for all this project?
Well, they moved forward with it, Frank, because at that time they had 75% funding from the federal government. So they knew that only 25% would be coming from the people of Cook County.
And that why it was so important to have the Illinois Congressional working with the district.
Absolutely. This project benefits not only Cook County, but the entire state of Illinois.
Yeah, because this was a bipartisan effort on the Republican and Democratic side.
It was then, and it still is now.
Yes, and now since we're here, a ceremony of completing the deep tunnel, we have 2 more reservoirs to be completed.
That's correct. We're working on them now. The Thornton Quarry, yes. Their material service there is digging, and we have to be ready to go into there in 2012, as you well know. And of course, we're working across the road here on our own property and digging another tunnel there. They're removing the spoil.
Yeah, and once the TARP project is completed, we still have to do improvements on our plants also.
Oh, yes, we have, of course, as you know, we have our 50-year projection on plant improvement and so forth. And there's more to TARP. There's a phase 2 to TARP. There are other tunnels that should be built that have been, the plans are drawn, they're sitting on the shelf, so we have to start getting the funding to start that.
And that's why it's so important of your position of chairing the Finance Committee, because for us to finance it, we have to sell bonds.
That's right. Frank, that's a very important position, and I have had the support of the board and the staff at the Water Reclamation District. When I first became chairman of finance, our bond rating was AA, A+, And the staff, working with the Board of Commissioners, has worked that up to a AAA bond rating now. We're one of the few agencies in the entire state of Illinois that enjoys a AAA bond rating, and we're really proud. You know we're proud of that.
Yeah, this saves taxpayers dollars because we are getting a very good investment on our bond, and it helps the tax owners here in Cook County.
We just restructured our debt about a week and a half ago, $415 million, and our bonds were sold by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that has to tell you that people have confidence in the Water Reclamation District. When we go on the street and selling bonds, they go quickly.
Sure, because the investors are looking whenever we sell a bond because they like to buy the bonds.
We've never missed an interest payment.
Yes, and this TAR project, as Commissioner Majewski mentioned, her husband was one of the leading commissioners back in 1972, and they had vision there in 1972. And here in 2006, we have Commissioner Majewski here that still have vision for the.
We're working with a wonderful board, Frank. You know that. We work together. We may not agree on everything all the time, but we agree to disagree, and we work together.
Yes, and the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago covers all of Cook County. They treat wastewater, majority of all of Cook County, and they treat it at a very economical cost.
Exactly. Our mission when we were created in 1889 was to collect, treat, and dispose of raw sewage. And we were backed into flood control in the 70s. And then, of course, a year and a half ago, we took over stormwater management for the entire county of Cook.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Majewski.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have with me Commissioner Kathleen Meany. She's our vice president. And Commissioner Meany, how long have you been a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago?
I've been here for 16 years. I was first elected back in 1990.
And you've probably seen the progress of completing the deep tunnel.
I sure have, and it's been a marvel all the way along. And today is just a wonderful day to celebrate this terrific engineering accomplishment.
And it's a credit of everyone at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District because the commissioners had the foresight to keep it going. We had excellent staff, and now we're seeing the benefit of having this deep tunnel.
And there's been a lot of work to do. It's really been an effort on the part of not only the elected officials, but so many engineers and people that could really dream the impossible dream. But although Congress authorized the project, every year we have to go back and beg for the funds, get the money appropriated to continue on with the work. So we have to thank our Illinois delegation in Washington, D.C. as well for helping us to get that money included in the president's budget.
Yes, because, it's really a bipartisan effort. Both Democrats and Republicans are working here in Illinois when they go to Washington to try and get us the funding. And this is why it's so important that we need everyone involved, our local communities, our people out there, the public, and also everyone involved, the mayors of almost every town to make sure that we do get the funding to complete the projects.
I think you're right, Frank, and you and I have had this conversation that this time of year, Mother Nature reminds us who's in charge with a rainstorm. And I think that you're right, it is a bipartisan effort because water and flooding knows no boundaries, and elected officials on both sides of the aisle want to serve their constituents. So I think that's one of the reasons we've had such terrific cooperation is that everybody knows it's a great project and they want to help out.
Yeah, and observing throughout all of Cook County along our waterways that before we didn't have much development along our waterways. Now, people are building condos, homes, recreational facilities, because before the buildings that they used to build along the waterways, the back of the building used to face the waterways. Now we don't have that anymore. We have, you look out there and you see condominiums.
Oh, that's high real estate value. The cafes along the river and the hotels. It's really such an amenity. It's just done a wonderful thing for our city, I believe.
Yes, and also you have been doing a very fine job as our Vice President at the Water Reclamation District. Thanks very much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Let me know when. It was the district that reversed the courses of...
I have with me Deborah Shore. She was elected in the primary election for the Commissioner of Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, and she's going to get elected in November. And Deborah Shore, why did you want to become the Commissioner here at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago?
Well, thank you for asking, Commissioner Avila. I believe that water is going to be the issue in years to come, that as we find substitutes for oil, for fossil fuels over the next 20 years, there are no substitutes for fresh water. And the Water Reclamation District has an absolutely vital role to play in how we can teach people about our water use, how we can work to keep more fresh water here in the Lake Michigan Basin instead of sending it into the sewers where we have to pay to treat it and then we send it down and be part of New Orleans' problem. So I think this agency has had a vital role to play and will have an even more vital one in the future.
You know, that's true because they say that a person could be without food for about a month. But to be without water, we only could be without water for a couple of days.
That's right.
And that's why it's so important, water. And they also say that 1% of all the water in the world is fresh water. And I forgot what the percentage of that were, like a 0.5% of that is our fresh water. And so we have to take care of that so small amount of water that we have here in the world.
Well, and as you know, the Great Lakes collectively hold 20% of the world's fresh surface water. So as we find substitutes for oil, I think the focus is going to be on those of us who live in the Great Lakes cities. And the nation and the world will be looking to us to see if we're responsible stewards of this irreplaceable resource. And in Chicago and in Cook County, we're a net loss to Lake Michigan. We take 1.5 billion gallons a day out of the lake for residential use, for industrial use, and we return almost none of it. But I think there's a lot more we can do to treat our water as a precious resource.
You know, that's true because we're very fortunate because one of our functions at the Water Reclamation District is that we protect our water supply. And what is our water supply? Lake Michigan.
That's right. And the district got new authority, as you know, through your efforts 1.5 years ago for stormwater management for all of Cook County. So I think that provides new opportunities for how do we keep some of that rainwater, which is fresh water, here to recharge our underground water supply, to go back into the lake instead of contaminating it in our sewers.
Thanks very much. And you did mention stormwater management. Very important job here in Cook County because before what we take care of was wastewater out of sight, out of mind. Now stormwater is not out of sight. So a lot of the public out there is going to look to us to solve that stormwater management here, the flooding here in Cook County.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
You're welcome. Thank you.